All right, so today we're learning Express.js, and I want us to, at some point, refactor the last work we did, the last project we did with FS. We're going to attempt to refactor it to use Express. All right, but before then, um, let's just learn about basics of Express before we get into that. Okay, so. I'll call this index.js, and I'm going to index, then npm install. Okay. All right. So let's go. So I think that I've mentioned at some point that Express is just an improvement upon what Node.js gives us by default, which is the core Node.js HTTP module. All right. So Express is just that improvement. Okay. For instance, we're going to see how easy it is. Let's write a basic no. All right, so npm starts. Okay. So let's write a basic server. All right. So we have to install Express. That's the first thing to do because it is an external package. So I'm going to say npm I express. Okay, so Express has been installed. If we check our package.json, we have it amongst our dependencies. All right, just to mention, node_mon should be in dev dependencies. All right, so in case you're writing your own project, you should install node_mon like this. Uh, this guy. Install node_mon like this. npm install --c dev. All right, node_mon. Okay, so that's how you should install node_mon. So then to be in the dev dependencies and not your actual dependencies. Yeah. So here we are, we have Express installed. So we just come here and we import, so I'm going to use Express, command JS syntax, Express. Okay. So now we have Express. We can, of course, I love doing this a lot so that my students realize that nothing is magic. All right, so you see what you're actually dealing with. So this is Express. Express is a function. All right. So this is the function, and this is what it exports. All right. So you have application, and you have a lot of things inside it that you can make use of. All right. So if you're a very curious student, you can go in there and try to explore. Okay. But then what we usually make use of is the app. I think we just call the function. You see, express is a function. If you scroll up, you see that express is a function, right? And when we call it, it returns an application. Okay, so that's why you see that we now call express like this. All right, and then it returns that application. So let's console log app and see. Okay, so if we go back and check, you would see that. Let's go. Fact, I'm going to clear my console and be run again. All right, so you see the application that was returned. That I cleared my console. Somebody is joining my screen, please. All right, so application was returned, and now we can use this app, right, to do a lot of things. So we say app listen, all right, and you provide a port that I should listen on. Okay, let's see. So I'm going to get rid of these console logs. Just log up. All right, let's go out and see. Okay. All right. So this is it. App. All right. And we can make use of a lot of things attached to app. All right. So you see listen here. Okay. And that's when we do app to listen. That's what we do. All right. So if you point on this, you're going to see uh, the documentation, all right, for listen. Okay. So instead of app http.create server, this is what you'd have done before, http.create server, and stuff like this. You can just simply listen on the app directly, all right? App.listen, then you provide the port, all right? So that's it. Now for easy reference, if this is your first time using Express, you can go to Express.js, all right, and check the documentation. Okay. So these are you install it and click on API documentation and it brings you here. So you see you have Express and then you call that Express function that is returned to get the app. All right. And then there are a lot of middlewares we get to that. Okay. That you can make use of. Then you see app.listen. All right. So this is app.listen. You just pass in the port and you should be good to go. So you see how easy it is to spin up a server compared to the HTTP core module. All right. So it would just come here and say, listen on, say 4,000, because everybody does 3,000. Let's do 4,000. Listen on 4,000. All right. And then here we say app.get. All right. Request, that's request and response. And just console the log rec.biz URL. Okay. Plus rec dot URL. Okay. So when does it get enter? Okay, we're not responding. We're just logging to the console. All right, so let's check our console. Do we have the URL there? Yes, we do. It is just the root URL. So if we say cakes, for instance, and save, go back and call cakes. All right. Look now, cakes is being logged to the console. Okay, so that's what we're doing. So as opposed to
Sorry, hi everyone. Am I the only one that cannot hear anything?
Yeah, hello. I can't hear him either. I think the network took him out.
Okay, thank you.
I think we should just communicate him. Let me communicate him on Slack.
Yeah, because he went out of the meeting.
Yeah, let's just exercise some patience. I think he's having network challenges.
Okay, I think he's back.
Hello, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir,
Yes,
I
we
can hear
can.
you.
The network has been poor,
Please,
Mm.
just taking
who
me out.
who has the I'm so sorry, who has the host privilege? Please transfer it back to me. Okay. Chuka. It's Chukuka. Is he on the call? Okay, yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'll do that right away. I never know I got the host permission.
Okay.
I just did.
All right. So you guys are going to help me here. I don't know at what point I went off so that I can back up a bit.
You are trying to test the route for large cakes.
Oh wow, that was a long time ago. Yeah, that's serious. All right. So yeah, I said cakes, right? And I was logging the base URL and the URL. So if we go here and check cakes, we get it in the console, right? We're not responding yet. So I went ahead to explain, how Express makes things much easier. All right. So if you check our previous implementation, we had the HTTP core module. All right. And then we had just one handler. Okay. So I told you guys that handlers are like receptionists, right? So when you visit a server is like a building, and then you want to go to a specific office, okay? That would be the reception office or the reception, okay? That's the port number. So it takes you to a particular office. And then that's in that office, there is somebody that will direct you to wherever you want to go. Okay. So the receptionist in most cases will now say, you tell them, okay, I came here to do this, to do that, to do this. And then they say, okay, go to this office, go to this office, right? So with HTTP model, we had just one receptionist. Okay. Only one person attends to all requests. So you have to now say, if the visitor wants to go to this route and the method of their request is a get, then respond like this. Or if, and this could get really messy. Just imagine you were writing Google, for instance, or you're writing something large that a lot of persons are going to be using that will support a lot of routes, a lot of methods. Okay. What you'll be doing is that you have a lot of if statements in this block, and this can get really messy. Okay. But with Express, what you do is you just say, oh, if it's a get request, all right, if there's an interaction in the app and it's a get request, all right, and it's going to this route, we want this guy to handle it. So with Express, you have multiple handlers. It's like you walk into a banking hall, right? And you have different tellers that can attend to you. All right, that's how Express, does their own job. So we could come here and say, if it's a post request to cakes, then this second handler will handle it. So you can see that each route or URL has their own handler. All right. So that's the beauty of Express. Just one beauty of Express. As we progress, you're going to see how we can share this uh, or rather separate this code into modules, into different files using what is called the MVC framework. All right. But before then, let us try to refactor this application using Express. All right. And let's see how simple our server will become. All right. So let's go. So we were making use of a file as a DB. which is this file. So we'll still do that here. We're not connecting to a DB yet. So let's copy that, put it here. So we have our database. And there's an error. So let's try FS not defined. So we need the FS module. So I'm going to const FS equals require FS save. Yeah, our app is running again. So what do we want to do? So we are saying that if we have a request to the get URL, we want to do this. Okay, so get URL, do this. All right, and what's that? What do we want to do? We want to respond. So instead of end, right, we use JSON because we are sending a JSON response, right? We use JSON. Okay, so say res.json, and that should be that for that. So the next route would be the home route and then post. Okay, so what do we want to do when that occurs? So we're going to copy this, all right, and then come here. So post to the home route. Let's paste this here, all right. And then let's look at what we try to do. So we say request.on data. We, store the chunk and stuff like that. All right. But then with Express, we do not need to do this anymore. We didn't need to do request.on and stuff like that. The reason is because so with Express, right, we can make use of a middleware, all right, that will convert the body, all right, from a buffer, all right, to JSON. So that will be done for us even before the request gets to the route. So how do we do that? Let's go back to Express, and you see that we have, if I click on Express, we have express.json. So this is a middleware, all right? If you read what it does, it says this is built-in middleware function in Express. It passes incoming requests with JSON payloads, all right? And it's based on body parser. So it returns a middleware that only passes JSON and only looks at requests where the content type header matches the type option, all right? So those are technical jargon. So what we do is we just copy this guy, go to our code, and very importantly, it has to come before all the routes. All right, I'm going to take my time to explain how middlewares work. All right, just be patient with me. So we'll say express the JSON, this same express, right? The JSON, and we don't even need to pass in options. So like this, all our requests coming into the server, know that express is our server, right? All our requests coming to the server is going to be processed, like this. So we say, sorry, it's a middleware, so I have to say app.use express JSON, yeah? So you say app.use for middlewares, all right? So now if we come back to post, we could now directly, so we're doing body.push, we don't need body anymore, all right? We request.end, so everything is a request.end. We can copy them out of there. So we're going to paste this here, and let's go through the code again. So we're passing body because it was a buffer. We don't need to pass the body anymore. All right. Well, we are passing the joke. We don't need to pass it anymore. We can just say rec dot body. All right. That will be our joke. So let me just comment every other thing out and see if we're still, so JSON. All right. So let's just joke. So we just respond with the joke for now. So I'm going to save this and let's do a post request. So let's change this to index.js. Okay, we're already doing that. So let's go here. We're looking for Thunder clients and to 4,000. So let's do a get. All right, so it shows us this. Not so funny joke, blah, blah, blah. Okay, our response is coming back. We'll deal with the data soon. So let's do a post. All right, and see. So you see our post. So we just did post and then we're getting our data proper. All right, our data is looking good. So if we come back here, it means our data is fine. So what we simply need to do is to create an ID for it. All right, and this is still valid. All right, and then we can still do this, and then we can still do this. And yes, we also do this. Okay, so let's check. I don't need to stringify it. It's already JSON. If you check the response here, it's already JSON. So I don't need to stringify. I can just do DB. And I also do not need to stringify this guy. Okay, because it's going to be JSON. All right. And yeah, are we good? Let's see. Let's see if we're good. Yes, I think so. Let's try. There's an error. We would fix it. So if I get again, we should see that our response is coming back clean. And if we post, you'll see that, so we have an error. Let's check what's that. The data argument must be of type string or an instance of buffer. Let's see. I think that error occurred at index 23, which is this. So then JSON.stringify should still be in order. All right. Yep. So let's try again. Post. Great. And let's see. Get sweet. So you see the new joke. All right. So our app is working well so far. So let's go back and you see that our code has become more easier. So this looks like what you are used to in JavaScript. It looks like more of JavaScript than, Node.js, if I'll use that term, because we didn't have to do this event emitter stuff, right? Listening for the event, okay? So we just went directly to access our data instead of converting it to a buffer. All right, instead of converting to a string from a buffer, Express does that for us with this middleware. Okay, so now I think it's time we even talked about middleware so that it doesn't look like fame to a lot of persons. All right. So what's a middleware? So let's go to Excali draw. Excali draw. Okay. So as the name suggests, a middleware is a function that stands as a middleman. So this is the middleman. Middleman. Okay. If you have heard about man in the middle attack, that's how your attacker pretends. Your attacker takes the form of a middleware. All right. So you have your main request here, request. All right. Or client, let's say client. All right. And then we have the server over here. And then there's a middleman, which is the middleware. When you send your request, right, like this is your request. The middleman has all the power to modify your request so that what the server really interacts with becomes different. So you can send a pink request and the server gets a blue request. All right, I'm just trying to tell you that the middleman can change your request, all right, and then your server gets to interact with the changed request. So this is supposed to be a bad thing when you talk about security. As a general concept, what I just explained is supposed to be a bad thing. In fact, this is the short way to explain what a man-in-the-middle attack is. So somebody comes in the middle of your request, and then you're sending a request to your server, the person changes your request to what it wants, and then sends it to your server. And when your server is responding, it passes through the middleman again, and then before it gets to the client. All right. So a lot of things can go wrong. But in terms of Express, it's a middleware. It's called a middleware. All right? The middleware. And what happens is that this is written by you. That's the difference. You are the one who wrote this. Okay. So you can use middleware for a lot of things, for validation, for data integrity, which is also a part of validation, a lot of things, right? You might want to say, oh, when a user sends a request, I want something to interact with the request. First, check if this user has the right access level to access this particular resource. And if they don't, then go back. Don't get to the server. All right. So you can do a lot of things with middleware. You can do login with middleware. So with middlewares, you can do login. So you can log every request that comes to your server. You can do validation. You can do authentication, right? Authentication. All right. So with login, you could say when a request comes to my server, I want to log where that request is coming from. And then there are login services that you can use. All right. You can log it directly to your server, save it in the file. That's why as you keep getting experience with programming, you discover that there's a log file that you can always go to and say, oh, I want to check what happened. All right. Why did my server crash? All those things are logged, to that file. Okay. And then there is validation. There's validation. So you could say that this particular route should accept objects that follow this structure. Say, I need a name. All right. I need a name. I need a description. Okay. And then this would be like your validation. So when you have requests coming in, they'll first go through your validation logic. All right. And then your validation middleware will check if the request coming in matches this particular format. And if it doesn't, then the user gets, an error, with the particular response that should be relevant to them. All right. Description not provided or description is required, stuff like that. So this is backend validation. All right. For the front end guys, you do something like this in the front end. On the server side, we do that too. Okay. So that's like a double end validation, front end and back end. This validation is done with the middleware. And then you could also do authentication. So when a user tries to log in, of course, they're going to send you their login details via the request, right? Before it even hits the main server, okay? Before it hits the server, we're going to check it to get to the authentication middleware. And the authentication middleware we check is the name, or does this username exist, all right, in our database? And if yes, it will also check, does the password exist? If yes, also, you check if the password matches, the password that was provided matches what we have in database. And if the answer is no, you give an error. So the request doesn't even get to our server. All right. The middleware just interacts with it. And if it's not qualified to get to the server, it is, an error is returned right back from the middleware to the client. All right. But if it qualifies, that's if it matches every of the criteria that were set up, then it gets to the server. All right. So that's the work of a middleware. Okay. So now that I've explained that, this should make more sense. So remember that JavaScript reads your file from top to bottom. Okay. It reads your file from top to bottom, and then it gets to this place or line 1, and it imports your FS module. It gets to line 2, it imports Express, and then it starts the server at line 3. So this is what we do when we do http.create server. I think that's what's happening here. All right. And then when it gets to line 5, it loads our data from our file database. All right. And then when it gets to line 7, it now mounts a middleware here. Okay. So if you take this file, all right, if you take this file back to sorry guys. I have to do something. All right, so if you take that code now and bring it here, so let's visualize everything. If I paste that code here, all right, and let's really look at what's happening. You will see that this is running from top to bottom, right? Running from top to bottom. So I'm gonna, and then this guy right here is a middleware. Okay, so hello, please mute your mic. Can you hear me, guys?
Hello. 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 Hello.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Very good. So why was that person testing his mic with the class? All right, so yeah. So I was saying, so this is a middleware, right? And then let's continue. Proceeds. So don't send backward. Let's see. Send to back. All right. Okay. All right. So this is it. So you have your middleware, all right, before the actual request is now taken care of. So you can call this middleware a security man, however you want to think about it. When somebody is coming to your house, they first meet your security guy at the gate, or coming to your office. Let's stick with the office analogy. First meet your security man at the gate. He checks, okay, this person qualified to get in here? All right. Or what do I want to do with this person? The person could write their name in a sheet. All right. If you visited some offices before, you have to log your presence in. So that's like a login middleware. The middleware, which is the gateman now, is performing login. All right. That same middleware can still perform authorization or validation and authentication. They check your ID card. Do you have the right, authorization to enter through this gate, for instance? Okay, that's validation. Authentication, they have to check your whatever, your car. If you have bomb or if you have anything, check your boots and all those things, right? So yeah, just thinking of this off the top of my head. So it might not really align, but you get the gist. Okay. So your middleware has to do all those things. Okay. And then the request proceeds further to now hit the route. That's get to the required office. All right. Is it a get request, then go here, go here. But before those things, what happens is that the middleware is going to run. Okay. So if we go back to our code, now you should have more understanding of what we are doing here. Okay, so this is our middleware. And what does it do? It's going to check the request coming into our Express server and convert the body to JSON. That's what it does. All right. I've never looked at it before, but let's see. Console.log. Let's see if we can. If we can't, then it's fine, because some of these functionalities are encapsulated. But if it's not, we should be able to get eyes into what's happening. So Express, let's see. Hey, where do I keep this guy to stop disturbing me? So let's do check. And we're looking for JSON. All right. So let's see JSON where DAO. Application, yeah. I think it might be encapsulated. That's the response. No, that's not what I'm looking for. Router, we know if you guys see. Okay, see, it's JSON. All right, it's a function in the Express server. Okay, and that function is what returns the middleware. I'm not sure if I log that function itself, I'll get anything meaningful. Okay, but let's see. JSON. Okay, nothing meaningful, just function JSON. All right. So, but then you get what we're saying. All right. So we have our middleware here, and then when it passes the middleware, rec.body becomes JSON. Before now, right, or when you use the core HTTP module, rec.body is not JSON. It comes in as a buffer. It's a string. All right. Okay. So, but after, we use this on it, it will now convert it. So all those conversions we did, right? Buffer the concat, and then we now put it to the array. And when it is done, like the rec.on end, we'll now combine all the buffers together and turn it to string. All right. That's what rec.body is doing for us. Okay. We turn it to string and then turn it to JSON. That's what the body is doing for us. So we've outsourced that functionality to a middleware. Okay. So that's what's happening here. Now you can create your own middlewares. If we go back to this illustration, I told you that you can do login, you can do validation, you can do authentication. You can create your own middleware. How do you create your own middleware? You simply say app.use when you want to use a middleware. All right, you do .use on the application. Okay, so it's going to be a function. All right, and the function would take in a request, a response, and then next. All right, so you have request, response, and next. So what we want to do with this our middleware now, we'll say console.log, all right, the request. So who is that? You have to write their name at the gate. So say rec.base URL, just what we did a while ago, rec.URL. Okay, so they will register their URL at the gate. All right, so now let's test it and see. So if I try to hit the get endpoint now, you see that it has logged the URL at the gate. All right, look at my terminal and you see that the / is there. Okay, but then now you see something here. It is processing non-stop. All right, why is it processing non-stop? It's just processing. It's not giving me a response. Why? Let's go back to our code. When you use middlewares, I told you that the request is going to get to the middleware first before it gets to the server. So at this point, the guy is still at the gate. He has not been released, okay, to the next stop. So what do? You say next. You just call next. And that is what releases the guy to the next stop. So if everything in your middleware has been fulfilled. If you are trying to authenticate the person, you do all the logic before you call next. And if everything goes well, that's when you call next. All right. If anything goes wrong, you throw an error, and then this line of code will not be run. But if everything goes well, you call next. That means, okay, you can now go over to the next stop. All right. The next stop could mean the next middleware, or could actually mean the route handler, as you see here. In this case, the next stop is the route handler. Okay, so if I save now, and let's try to make the request again, you'll see that we now get our response. It logs to the console. That's the middleware does its job, and then it gets to the route handler, and then it is handled properly. All right, so that's how you write your own middleware. I could write another middleware that says, let's say this is a validation middleware. So I could say console.log user validated and save. So it will go through log. So let's just make this just make sense. So we're going to say login. All right. So it logs and then it's validated. Then it gets to the route handler. So let's try to make the request again. If I press send, you see that it logs, login, logs, user validated, and then it gets to the route handler. Okay. So if you forget to call next, it means you are holding the visitor ransom at the middleware. That means you are not releasing the person to the next step, all right, or the request to the next step. So it will just hang there. Just to show you again, I remove next and then call. You see that it's hanging there. It has logged, it has validated, but it's still hanging. So you should not forget to call next if everything goes as you want it, all right, so that your request can go through. Okay, so that is middleware for you in a nutshell. All right, so we created our own middleware, 2 middlewares here. But then we might want a middleware that is not general to our server. That means this is not a general middleware. I do not want this middleware to run on every route. All right, I want it to run only for specific routes. All right, in that case, let's say you're trying to access the bus. All right, you would not expect that the security who handles you at the gate is enough for you to get to the office of the boss. No. When you get to the receptionist and okay, it's a post request and you're looking for boss, they will not say, oh, this guy needs an extra level of validation. So what you do is you pass in a middleware here. All right. So this middleware is going to handle, further checks for just this bus route. All right. And then if the check is positive, that means the person is cleared to visit the bus, you call next on this middleware and before it gets to the handler. All right. Before it gets to the proper handler that does whatever needs to be done, or before it gets to the boss, let's just say this is the boss office. Okay. So how do we do it? The same way. So I could just cut this from here. That means I don't want it to be general to everybody. At this point, it is general to every route. But now I want to make it specific to just this route. If I post it here, I don't need to use app.use now. All right, I should just put the middleware in there. So I don't need app.use in this case. So if I save, let's try. If I go to just my get route, home route, everything works. It just log in. It doesn't validate. It just logs. All right, because that's what we have generally for everybody. It logs. But then if I go to the bus route and try to post /bus and send, you see that it logs and then it validates. All right, it logs and it validates. Okay, so that is it. If I click on it again, you see that it logs and it validates. Why? Because we have the global or the general middleware for login, and then we have this localized middleware for just the bus route. All right. So at this point, I'm going to take questions before we proceed. I'm going to take questions before we proceed. What's the time? Let's take one or two questions. Okay, let me look at your comments. Okay. So, do you have questions?
Hello, hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So my question is not really about the express. What I wanted to ask is about array destructuring. You mentioned it the last time, so but you did not explain it quite much. And how can it be used in express as well?
Yeah, it can be used. So that's very, very good. Thank God you brought it up. But I'm going to hold on that question till the end of the class, so that I do not miss my direction. All right. So it's a very valid question, and
Okay, no problem.
yeah, but I'll handle it after this session. So let me write it down. The structure. Okay.
Good afternoon.
Yeah,
I
good
mean,
afternoon.
good morning. Yes. You showed us another way of um, i- installing NodeMon. So, ca- can you briefly explain it again? And then, why do we have to install it that way? You know, why not the old way we used to install it?
Okay. All right. That's also another question, by the way, and I'll handle it when we're done. Just yeah. So
Then
the
again, sir, please, let me ask this. I used to come, come across, pass it. Then I've actually read about it, but I don't, have a full grasp, about it. So, what does pass really mean?
EARSE. Is it this pass you're talking about?
Yes, yes, yes. What does it, what's its
Well,
peculiarity?
so you're going to come across it. Um, you're going to come across it differently, different languages, different context, but it's an English word. All right. So let's ask the internet, what does it mean to pass? All right. Okay. So what does it mean? It means to resolve into its component parts and describe their syntactic rules. An act of passing a string or a text. All right, let's go again. The process of transforming the data from one format to another. So I think I'll go with this. All right, so anywhere you see pass, you can actually replace that word with this. So when we say JSON.parse, what do we want to pass? What do we want to transform to another format? So we want to transform a buffer, no, a string. In this case, this is a string. It will come in as a string because we're using UTF-8. If we remove UTF-8 from it, to come in as a buffer. But let's just continue. So this guy is going to come in as a string. We want to pass that string. So to what? JSON. All right. So that's when you see pass, just replace it with this meaning. It means to transform data from one format to another. So we're trying to pass a string, which is the input, to JSON. When you say JSON.stringify, we're trying to convert an object to JSON string. All right. But when you say pass, it means you're converting to JSON. All right, so that's the meaning. So anywhere you see pass, just try to reason about it within that context. All right, with this meaning. Okay, so that's it.
Hello, T.
Yeah.
Can middleware functions be asynchronous?
Can middleware functions be asynchronous?
But what you've demonstrated is a sequential flow of it, like a sequential execution order.
Yeah, so it depends on what you want to do, right? It depends on what you want to do. So I think syntactically, it allows that, all right? But now you have to now think on the logic that you want to perform. Is this something you want to wait for? Do you understand? Is it something you want to do in passing, or is something you want to do, you want to wait for? All right. So for instance, a scenario is coming to my head, but I don't know if it completely works. So let's say you visit an airport and then you have to, there's where you keep your luggage and then you go and wait for your luggage. Do you understand? So you keep your luggage somewhere and you have to walk down. That means you are still doing other activities. You just delegated that job of carrying your luggage, for instance, to that system. All right. And then you can do other things. That's a synchronous operation. Okay. So if your middleware is that kind of stuff that you don't mind waiting for the response, of course it could be asynchronous. You just drop it there, do other things, and whenever the response comes, you're fine with it. Okay. But if you are trying to validate a user, for instance, it can be asynchronous because you have to wait for the result of that validation before you progress. If you are trying to authenticate a user, for instance, you can't make it asynchronous because you have to wait for it before you progress. All right. So yeah, you have to think about it. Does the logic permit that? But syntactically, I think it works.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. Okay, so if there are no more questions, let's see if I have some more time. I don't know if there's another class coming up, or let me not steal somebody's time. So guys, hold on. I'm going to quickly check with my other tutors if there's another class so I can teach some more before we go. Maybe an extra 15 minutes or so. Okay, guys, I'm back. Just did something asynchronous. I'm waiting for the response. Then I'll know if we end the class or we have the time. So let's continue before then. All right. Yeah, still talking about Express. So if you look at our app, right, we now have these routes that make our job easier. So we're no longer writing ifs and stuff like that. All right. So we could even do app dot put, right? And then so this URL. So we write our handler. There's no middleware. Okay. We could also do app dot delete. All right, delete, and then and then if we want to handle for, so let's say this guy, we said boss here, but let's copy this and let's just make it uniform. So everything here should be for get. All right, so handling get routes, right? And say we want to handling post routes. Right? So no, handling home, all right, home routes, which is this, not get routes. Okay. And then we could also want to handle slash boss. All right. So everything here is going to be slash boss. So get slash boss, post slash boss. All right, you get the flow right now. So if let me just get rid of all this. Okay. So get boss, post boss, what's it now? Put or patch, put boss, and then there's delete boss. All right. So you see all these guys are handling boss. All these guys are handling home routes. And as our application increases, right, or the need in our application increases, you see that we're now having too many routes on this server file. Okay. If you are creating a server that serves millions of people, millions of routes, right? So like Google or whatever, it's going to be too much to have all these routes in this one file. Okay. So that principle of separation of concerns now comes in. In case you've never heard of it, what it means is you're going to group like behaviors or like functionalities together. All right. So that's why for even everybody, right? But let's just say for the front end folks, because I know that a lot of us have a bit of front end experience. You see that when we build our apps, we have stuff like images, we have CSS, all right, we have JS. Okay, we have folders like this, and then we now have the index, all right, the HTML on the root. Okay. And then all these guys, you have them like this. So what you are doing is that you are actually separating concerns. Although that's in the basic form, but you're actually separating concerns. All right. So what you're doing is that JavaScript should go to JavaScript file. Images should go to images file. CSS should go to CSS files. All right. And in fact, that's why you are discouraged, all right, from writing JavaScript inside your HTML. So for those of you who like writing script tags in HTML and writing bunch of JavaScript inside of that, you are discouraged from doing that. All right. The most acceptable way conventionally is to link to an external script. All right. For CSS, don't write inline CSS or internal CSS, write external CSS. All right. That is separation of concerns. HTML should be in HTML file. So if I see a file called .html, I should be expecting HTML code inside of it. I shouldn't be expecting JavaScript code inside of it. If I see a file called HTML, I should not be seeing CSS inside of that file. All right. That's the concept of separation of concerns. Note, it's a convention and you can bend the rule if you know absolutely what you're doing. All right, that's why you can see that people still write inline CSS, people still write internal CSS, but that's not the best. All right, so the concept of separation of concerns is that the things that are alike will be grouped to, a particular folder, all right, or stuff like that. So let's get rid of all these files I just created. No, all these guys, delete. All right, and I think we're good. So how do we separate concerns now? One thing we can do is that we could use the MVC framework. All right, so because of this issue of separation of concerns, there are different ways of structuring our projects that have come up. All right, for front end, for React, for instance, we have atomic, is it atomic? Yeah, atomic design for React. All right, by Brad Frost. So this is a way to structure a React project, widely accepted. Then for even front end and back end mostly, we have what's called the MVC framework. All right. or architecture, all right, or pattern. All right. So what does it mean? You have model, you have view, you have controller. So it says MVC is an architectural design pattern that organizes an application's logic into distinct layers, each of which carries out a specific set of tasks. So you see, you organize them into distinct layers. So we have what is called the model, we have what's called the controller, we have what's called the view. Okay, so if I can represent them here, MVC, MVC, okay. So MVC here, okay, that's the design pattern or the architectural pattern. It stands for model, right? View and controller. All right. So today we're going to talk about model and controller, and next, okay, on Friday we'll talk about view. All right. So what is a model? So model is simply for working with data. All right. So model is for working with data. So if you have logic that has to do with describing how your data should look like, that logic should be in your model folder. So for data structure, right? Structure, right? All right, that's it. And then you have view. This view should be for UI rendering, all right? So if you have codes for UI, all right, so let me just call it UI rendering for lack of better term. So if you have UI components, when I mean UI, user interface, what people would see, all right, you put them in the views folder, all right? And then if we have, which we always do, the logic. So this has to do with our handlers. All our handlers will be in controller, all right? So let's do this practically. So if I come here, all right, we have a lot of handlers here, right? We want to use MVC. So what I do is I'll come here and say, I did not delete CSS. Go on. CSS, follow your brothers. All right, so we do control plus. All right, some will call it controller, some will call it controllers. But I belong to the controllers group. So controllers. And then inside the controllers, we're going to use a naming convention. So the name of the controller, I'm going to call it boss.controllers.js. All right, this is my controller. So what does that do for me? So this is going to be to get box. So let's say get all boss or bosses. All right. So I like to use the function syntax because it provides some advantages that I cannot explain technically. So if you want to take my advice, use function, don't use arrow syntax. Okay. So this is it. So this is my controller for this to get all bosses. So the next guy would be to create a boss or to add a boss. So I'm going to say add boss. Add boss. All right. And the next one is going to be to update boss. All right. So this is CRUD going on here now, right? So add boss. Then this is update boss. All right. And then the last one is going to be delete boss. So we could say delete boss. All right. So that these are different controllers. Our controllers are our handlers. All right. Just the term changing now. Okay. And then what do I do? This is a module, so I have to export. So as a module.exports, okay, and I want to export all these guys. So get all bosses, add boss. Of course, you know that this is an object, so we're using this ES6 syntax. So this will resolve to get all bosses, and then the function. All right, this is what it will resolve to, in case you don't know. Okay, so there you go. And then I'm going to do update boss and delete boss. So now I have this module for our controllers. So if we come here, what we simply need to do is to import our module. So say const module controller, controller equals require. All right. Our controller is here, controllers slash boss controller. So module controller, I'll now come here and say module controller dot get all bosses. All right. Module controller dot add boss. Module controller dot what's it now? Update boss, right? And module controller dot delete boss. So if you take note, right, you would see that we're just playing with just the concepts. So this is a concept of modules, right? And that's what we're using here. They just in programming generally, you just have a lot of terms going around. But if you understand the basic concept of that language, you will never get lost. All right. In the midst of those terms, MVC, module, controller, and all those stuff. Right. It's just we're just using JavaScript terms and programming principles, all right, to form new concepts. Okay. So we are exporting an object from here. All right, this is an object being exported. All right, and when we import, we're going to get that object. So we're saving that object in module controller. And when we come here, we're just using object.getBoss. That object which is returned, which is this one, dot get all bosses, which is this guy, and which represents, like I said, it represents this guy here. All right, so it's just the ES6 syntax, okay? So that is it. All right. Then I'm going to use this opportunity to answer the question that somebody asked. The concept of destructuring. Now you see that this is an object, right? We know that this is an object, so we can destructure it and get what we want directly from inside. So get all bosses. You can just call them boxes, and then get add boss, update boss. We're destructuring now. Concept of destructuring, delete boss. All right. So instead of doing module controller dot, module controller dot, module controller dot, we can just directly just say get all boxes or bosses. Oh my God. All right. And we're good. Now, different developers are going to argue differently. Some are going to argue for readability. So if I'm saying get all bosses, this code is not completely it is readable, but it doesn't really tell me what's happening. It doesn't tell a complete story. All right. So you say app.get boss, right, on this route, and you want to use this function. So if you really think about these things, this is like writing that function directly here. But in this case, we are referring to it. It's just a reference. All right. So in case you did not think about it that way, that's what's happening. All right. So some persons are going to say, oh, get all bosses. How does this come about? Okay, but if we had said, so, all right, some of us are going to argue that, oh, you could simply search for get all bosses and then you will get it. What if there's another function that will be called get all bosses in this file? All right, another function coming from somewhere that will be called get all bosses. We will now have a conflict in this file. Okay, so some are going to argue that the better way is to not destructure, just leave it like this. Module controller. So that anybody reading knows that, oh, get all bosses is coming from module controller. All right. So this is me just trying to squeeze in these tips. So now we just, not the structure, just a module controller, save, and this error should go away. All right. So there you go. So when you're writing code, think about quality, think about readability, think about interpretation. All right. So that is it. So we have these guys, get, post, put, delete to handle buses. Then we can go to home, right? So we can just say get all, post to all, put, this doesn't really make sense actually, but we're just teaching. All right. So there you go. You can have controllers for this too. So we can just call it, let's just call it global or default. You will not have this in what's it called now? In the proper app, you don't have Dasha, but we just want to do that. So what do? Let's just copy this guy. Get all data. All the data. All right, and there's, in fact, let me not confuse you. So we're going to do something. We're going to say health check, for instance. And then that's the only thing we'll have in the home route. So we're going to export health check. Okay. And I'll take this guy, come here, get rid of all these guys. And I'm going to get, all right, I'm going to get, so you say / will give us that guy. All right, so what do we do here? We can import, let's just call it anything, default controller, right? So boss.default dot controllers. And then we say default controller dot health check. So that's what I want to do here. All right. So notice that we're not calling this function, so you should know that when you call it, you are actually invoking the function. No, we just want a reference to it. That's why we don't call it. So there's a difference. So with this, we have made our application very simple. Okay. We can still make it simpler, but then I'm going to leave that for the next class so that we do not, dish out a lot. There are persons who are able to take it in, but there are those who need, progressive learning in that sense, learning in chunks. So let's consider everybody, all right? So we're going to stop here, and in the next class, we'll talk about express router, all right? We'll talk about express router, and after that, we would then talk about interacting with our server. So what we'll do in the next class, express router, and then we'll write middlewares, all right? So all these middlewares we talk about, we'll try to implement them, all right? We'll try to do with login, validation, and authentication middleware, all right? We'll write all of them. And then I don't think that time will be enough. So on Monday, we will now talk about connecting our servers with databases. Then we'll now talk about performance and all those stuff, for servers. Okay. So thank you so much, guys, for your time. And to the question that somebody asked about how to install, why do we have to install some dependencies as dev dependencies? Okay. So in the real sense, when you host your application, right? That hosting means you carry what you have in your laptop and put it in the cloud. But when you put it in the cloud, you're actually putting it on another server or on another laptop. But that laptop is just available to everybody in the internet. When you do that, you are not developing. Why do we need node one? Let's start from why. Why do we need node one? We need node one to listen to changes that happen during our development and then restart itself. When your file is on the internet, you don't make changes to it. No change occurs to your file on the internet. So there is no reason to listen for changes and then restart. Okay. That does not happen. You don't change things. But because we are developing, we don't want to add S or comma to this code, for instance. And when we save, we have to go and run npm start again. So we need something to just help us realize that there's a change and then restart based on that change because we are developing. So that's why it's called a dev dependency. It is a development dependency. So when you are developing, you need it. But when you are online, when you have launched your product, you don't need it because there's no change happening to that version of your software online. So you don't need Node more. There are different stuff like that you don't need on the server, Webpack and some other guys. They are just for development to help your development process. So if you happen to come across any package like that, you install it with the npm install --save--dev command. All right. So because you want it to be in the dev dependency so that when your computer is running or your server is running in your remote server, it will not be installed. All right. That's the reason. When your server is running in production mode and npm install is run, only your dependencies will be installed. So you don't want to install more than what is necessary on your server because size of project matters a lot. All right. So all these things are things that you will come into with experience. But the basic explanation is that dev dependencies are for development purposes. All right. So that's for you. Okay. For destructuring, bro, that subject, or you saw me do it, right? For arrays, you destructure like this. That's just the difference. For objects, you use this and then grab the key, all right, from here. A key that exists in the object, that's what you are able to grab. Then for arrays, all right, you have to follow the format. So if you have something on, say, this is going to return something like this 0, 2, 4, 7, right? And you want to destructure it, then you have to provide a name for it, all right? So destruction is like creating a variable out of an array or an object. So you have to give it a name. So the name has to correspond with wherever that guy is in this array. All right. So if you are saying the first one should be called num1, second should be num2, third should be num3, the last one should be num4. It has to follow this order. 0 is going to be stored inside num1, 3 stored inside num2, 4 num3, and 7 num4. All right. If you don't want num1 and the likes, you can do like this, and it's still valid. All right. So num2 still gets 3, num4 still gets 7. All right. So you can read more about array and object destructuring, in JavaScript. All right. And it is important to also mention that you can still destructure, in your parameters. So for instance, I know that all my controllers are supposed to get rec and res, right? Because that's what they do. So what can I do? I could just directly get my body from here. All right. This is object destructuring because I know that request is an object. All right. When that request is passed into this function, I want to just directly destructure body from it. And it's very valid. For rest, you could just need to say, oh, I'm just going to use JSON, all right, from the rest. Okay. So I don't need to actually get the rest. I just want to destructure directly from it. But the disadvantage that a lot of developers will argue for, and even me, is that you are going to lose readability to an extent. All right. So if you say rest, if you have rest here, we all know that this is the response. But if you're just getting JSON, it could be like unexpected to some. All right. They are like, where is this JSON coming from? Okay, so you have to be very clear on that. So what you could do is you could go into the function and just say const body from rest. All right. So this is the structuring body from rest, from rec, sorry. All right. And we know that, body is being destructured from rec. So this code is more descriptive. All right. And it's more easy for other developers working on your team to read. And even you, when you come in the future to debug, you're not confused as to what is happening. If you see requests, all right, and sorry, this is a controller. If you see rec and res, you just know that, oh, this is request and this is response. And then you know this is a controller. All right, because you are in Node.js and you know that this is a format for controllers. Okay. And I forgot to say there's something that's not covered in MVC, which is middlewares. All right. So our middlewares are going to be in this folder, middleware. Okay. But we'll talk about more of this in the next class. Our time is fast spent. All right, guys. Thank you so much.